Okay, so we're still talking about conditionals. In the last class, we looked at if statements, how to write if statements, use the else statements, and then we talked about elif, else if basically, right? And one of the major things I said is that when you run through if, elif, else statements, that the idea is that we only want one condition to be true. Okay, so it's not possible. It shouldn't be the case that you this block runs, this block runs, this block runs. Immediately this runs, then every other elif or else statement at the bottom doesn't work anymore. So that's the idea. It basically checks the conditional statements in order, checks the conditions in order from top to bottom. The moment one of them is true, it leaves the remaining block and then just go outside the indentation. In our case, the outside indentation could be print end program. That's the next line of code at the after the if statements, if and elif else statements. So like that's the major thing you need to understand as you deal with if and then and else statements. Basically, this is how to deal with conditions in any programming language. In Python, we use indentation, but yes, the idea stays the same, whatever language that you are learning. All right. So, can you please confirm to me that you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
All right. Okay. So, I'm going to go on today to I think we stopped at elif. That is else if, elif, and of course we have already talked about else, so I don't need to go through that again. Okay, so what I want to introduce us to is the idea of combining conditionals with certain keywords in Python, notably and, or, and not. Okay, I think in the last class I did something with not, where I used it to negate the truth value of a particular condition already. So not basically says, oh, change the truth value of this particular variable or statement or whatever it is. I also want to say that unlike certain languages, Python gives a truth value to how do I say it? Yes, to variables, right? For instance, if I have a list, right, and I want to check if it's empty, you could just say if not. The idea is that if the list is empty, that means its truth value will be false. If it has something, its truth value will be true. Okay, I don't think other programming languages allow this, or not many other programming languages allow this, but Python does. So that you could just see a simple variable and it has a truth value on its own. Okay. But anyways, I think that would be going too far. So let me just try to follow this note, and then you check out examples of how to combine conditional statements using these keywords. But obviously, it already makes sense to you. If you remember your logic class, let me take off all this code that we have here. If you remember your logic class in school, they will try to tell you about combining, or not combining, like they try to tell you how to do this truth table where one a value is a, another one is b. They will tell you, oh, t and f will give you t, right? F and t will give you t, but f and f of course will give you false, and I don't know, something like that. So it's just a similar way, the way in mathematics you see that you see something like minus times minus is equal to plus, plus times minus is equal to minus. So yes, that's exactly the same thing, the way this thing works. So when you are dealing with and not or, it's actually the same thing. So there is a way to process or, there's a way to process and then of course not is very straightforward. Not just says whatever the truth value is, change it to the opposite. If it was true, you make it false. If it was false, you make it true. That's what not basically does. Okay. So I think the important thing I need to show here, or let me ask, do we understand this idea from a previous logic class or from elsewhere, where you have to do or and? Do you remember that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I remember it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that means this shouldn't be complex for us to deal with. The idea is basically you need to understand the truth value. I'm putting brackets just for our understanding. You need to know what the truth value it results to, and then know the results of and or statements. This is something that is taught in mathematics, philosophy, and logic. So it applies in programming too. It's nothing complex. It's exactly the same principle. I'll run through it again, and uh, maybe I should just tell ChatGPT to generate one truth table something for me. But yes, I'll say it. But I think that truth table. Let me check if there's anything. Okay, it's here. Good. It's actually here. Look at it. It's in the notes. So, if the left side is true and the right side is true, and is going to give you true. Okay. If the left side is true and the right side is false, and is going to give you false. Okay, so basically what you should know is that if any of them is false, and will automatically give you false. So that's just the idea. If for and to return true, both conditions must be true. That's just the thing for and. So you can see that if for this table here, whenever it is false, whenever false occurs, you just get false as the result. The only time where it is true is when both left and right is true. Okay, so you can obviously see that straight up from the notes. Or on the other side is a little bit weaker. Okay, if true occurs anywhere, we can actually say it is true. Like if one of them is true, that means everything is true, A or B. All right. So if A is true, A or B becomes true. That's basically so. You could almost view them as opposites, but be careful. You want to understand this thing very well. If it confuses you, please take some time out to look at this table again and again and again. All right. The same principle actually applies in mathematics where you do minus times minus equals to plus, plus times plus is equal to plus, minus times plus is equal to minus. So it's the same idea. If after looking at it for a while and using it, you definitely will not forget it anymore. So that is the idea. Okay. So I think I want to run some code with seeing this in action, and then we are good to go. As usual, I think we'll do what we normally do. We will use an input. Let's say write a number. Of course, actually, I can just continue changing this code inside. But of course, I think it's always nice when we can pause within the code and try to understand what is going on. I'm reassigning, so this first x is a string. I'm reassigning it to an integer. So by the time you get to line 15, it's x becomes the integer version of whatever x was before. So this is actually allowed in Python. So yes. Okay, so we are good to go. So what will happen is whatever value I put in, if the number is greater than 10 and less than 100, all right, basically this is true and this is true, this is going to happen. Okay, if x is less than 10 or x is greater than 100, x is either small or large. If none of these two conditions are met, it becomes else, and we now say x is exactly 10 or 100. That's what it's going to say. And also, I want to say that it's possible for me to put another elif statement in between. Okay, so for instance, if this condition is true, just know that elif and else will not run anymore. The next thing you will see is any program. So you do this, and straight up it will come here and end the program. I'm emphasizing it because when you start doing algorithms or complex stuff, it's something that can be confusing at first. You need to know that it runs it in order. It runs it in order. So once one of these is correct, it does the code block inside it, and then skips every other part of the if and else block. Okay, so we are good to go. Let's run our code and see now. I'm going to write a number. Let's say 67. So x is a medium-sized number, and then the program ends. Right, end program. That's what happens. So let's run again. Let's take a look at a situation where x is less than 10. Right, so 7. X is either small or large. Right. Of course, I could also try something greater than 100. Let's do 700. Again, x is either small or large. So now I want to do a situation where x is exactly 10. Right, so x is exactly, and you can see the else block is what worked. Okay, so this is basically the idea behind using these keywords and or. Once you understand this table, you are able to deal with these particular you know how to use these keywords. So for the not, I think it's quite straightforward. But again, just to make the point, I'm going to run some code. So let me take this code and put it in here. Okay, so everything of this integerize inputs, it basically combines these two functions. It takes the inputs as a string and then changes it to an integer. I think it's a faster way of doing what I've been doing before. So let's use it. I'm going to run this. All right, so it says enter a big number. Okay, so let's say I enter 10, for instance. All of us know that 10 is not greater than 100, which means that response greater than 100 will return a false, right? And so not times, I'm saying times, but you get not false is actually true. So it's going to print this statement, okay? So let's see how that plays out. All right, so if I put a big number where this is actually true, you will see that it's going to just jump straight to ending the program. So let's do something that is very big, say 101. You see, this block didn't run anymore. So that's what not is used for. It basically changes the truth value of whatever you are dealing with. That's what not does. Okay. All right, I think there's an assignment here, but unfortunately it's no longer available because this material has been archived. Okay, but I'm going to send some things for us later on. So I'm getting to the part of conditionals. Mr. Ibuka, please, are you at home now?
Yeah, I'm close to the house. I'm like 5 minutes close to the house.
Okay, all right. So I'm about to start dealing with nested conditionals. Okay. Yeah, I wanted it to be in a good place when we begin to do that. But anyways, I know that if you listen, it will still make a lot of sense. So just to make the point, if a situation happens to be true always, okay, then definitely the statement will always run, and it's almost as good as using a well, let me not say a while loop, but yeah, it's almost as just writing out the statement, like what you are saying here now. If 5 is less than 15, all these things inside the indentation is going to happen. Well, 5 is less than 15, so this is always going to continue to happen. All right. So, but when I have another if block, all right, what is going to happen is that you are actually running an if statement inside an if statement. And you can also have another if statement inside that inner if statement, and on and on and on. Of course, it's very bad coding for you to have if statements up to 3 levels, except it is very, very important. You want to make your code as readable as possible. But it's good to introduce you to this topic. There are times where you actually would want double if statements as you keep on going on in your coding journey. Okay, so let's see how this nested conditionals is going to work. Okay, so again, I'll take this out. All right. Yeah, I'm coming. I'm going to use response instead. I like typing in the number so that we could just keep running the program without stress. So let's call it X instead, and we are good to go. Now we have another one, Y. Let's say Y. And another number. All right. Okay. So what will happen here is that if x is greater than 10, this is going to be printed. If y is greater than 10, it will now also say and y is greater than 10. And there's something I want you to look out for here as we run this program. Let me run it so that you see. Let me put a number that is really greater than 10, 11, and 12. X is greater than 10, and y is also greater than 10. Okay, so this runs, and it's inside the if block. Immediately it runs the print. This other if statement is still a valid Python code, so it is going to run it and check. Does y exist? Of course it exists. Is it greater than 10? And then it works. Okay, so once you indent inside an if statement, everything inside the indentation will run if the condition is true. It doesn't matter what is there, even if it's another if statement, it will work. I also want you to note this idea of nested code blocks because it occurs in multiple scenarios. Like when we go on, we'll deal with loops, last for loops, and while loops. It's possible for them to also be nested. It's possible to have a list inside a list, and on and on and on. So things can be nested. It looks a little bit complex, but programming is meant for solving problems, and in real life we have those kinds of problems. So yes, it happens often. Okay, so this is the idea behind nested if statements. It's not really that complex. The more you practice with it, the better you get at it. I'm going to try to run this code just so you see a use case of multiple if statements. Of course, there are probably cleaner ways of writing this code, but the major idea is to make you see why it may be necessary to have multiple if statements. So yes, let's go. Let's do this. I will read the code and then we'll run it. So first of all, it checks, is the password greater than 8? Oh yes, it's password. So the length of the password is greater than 8. The length is greater than 8. We will now be like, if any number in password or I don't want to introduce you to this for thing, but yes, it's basically a way to say that if there is a number if any of these, is inside of the password that you created, right? You are now allowed to go to the next if statement, and then it then goes if password is not equal to password.lower, right? The idea is to check for lowercase and uppercase, right? That means the password is valid, right? I also want you to note that in this nested if statements, they are, in a manner of speaking, nested else statements. There's a way my ID can actually help you simplify what you are looking at, because this may look very complex, okay? I want you to look at your screen and ask me any question at any point. So let me close it, right? I want to close the if statement, the statements that are aligned with each other. So let me close the innermost one first. I close this, right? I close this. I close this. I'm just hitting this arrows close to my laptop, close to the sidebar. I will also close this, right? Okay. I close this. Okay. Of course. So why I'm doing this is I want to show you how nested these things are. So this first if statement has an else. Okay. The else for this first one is this last statement that you are seeing here. Okay, so after you write if else, if you want to do nested if else statements, the way you should do it is that immediately you write the if, put the else block. Then you go inside that if statement, put your if else. If there's need again, go inside that if statement, put your if else. Otherwise, it will confuse you if you try to write it from top to bottom. Okay, so if your if statement has elif and you know that you will write another one inside it, my advice for you is that you should complete one if else block first before you go to the nested one to write the conditions, and that's what is going on here. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit confusing if you look at it like that, but I hope with what you are seeing now, it's a little bit more comfortable for your eyes. So let me open this gradually so that you see. So what happens here is that if the length of the password is greater than 8, password too short must be more than 8 characters. I think that it's supposed to be password too long, actually. Right? Don't you think so? If the password is greater than 8.
Should be password too long, yeah.
Exactly. So, but anyways, I hope you understand the principle. So then the next thing here is the second if block. Okay? If for this n is also a Python keyword, right? Like if any of these things inside here is true. I don't want to go into this because it's about something called list comprehension, all right? But what it basically does is that for any of these characters in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9, okay, if any number in password is here, that means this statement becomes true. That's what it does. You may want to paste this inside ChatGPT and explain this block of code for me later on in the class. For the records, it's actually here, nested conditionals. So you could look it up and try to understand what is going on. Then the next thing that happens is, of course, I think that also has an else statement. Like the else statement is that, oh, password must contain a number, right? Password must contain a number. Okay. Um, so if like there's no number in your password, that means there's problem. I also want you to also note that this thing doesn't use integers because when you type, it takes it as a string. So that's why they had to do this kind of thing. The user doesn't care, doesn't know how we write the code. It is you that's the programmer that has to understand that, okay, well, it's not really an actual number, it's a string I'm going to use for this particular situation. So yes, when the person types that in, we understand what numbers mean in the context of our code and also in the context of whatever the user is typing. Okay, so the next one is if password is not equal to password.lower. So password.lower is like, this is a string, password is a string. So dot lower is a function in string that allows you to change everything in that particular string to small letters. It goes through it, all the letters inside it become small letters automatically. All right. So if password is not equal to password.lower, let's see what happens. Okay, it says password must contain an uppercase letter, right? And then let me open this other else block for the final one. If password is not equal to password.upper, then password must contain a lowercase letter. So let's see how we go with this. Let me run it. So I don't know, what will I use now? Let's use tests user, and they said that it shouldn't be greater than 8, so I will add 1. I don't know, is it greater than 8 now? Password valid, account created. So this is what happens here. All right, so this is what is going on here. All right, so I don't know, I think this code block may require you to look at it multiple times, but what I really wanted to do here is to make you understand nested conditionals, and I think that you get the idea from here. Okay, that we can use a condition inside the condition inside the condition, etc. And even as I keep using the if statements, they can keep on having their own respective elif and else statements. Okay, so that's the major thing I wanted to show you. And also, of course, this should also introduce you to some complexity in coding. Like you can see, trying to understand what is happening here, what is happening here. It is normal for you to look at a code for long periods, trying to understand what is happening. To be honest, right now, what I do many times is just copy it, paste it, and say, ChatGPT, explain this thing for me. So it does a good job of explaining a good, it's mostly correct many of the times. Okay, so I think with that, we are good here. The next thing will be to deal with practice assignments basically. But before we do the assignment, okay, first of all, I will post the assignments in chats that we're going to do. I want to talk about this bonus aspect. Please try to read this note very well. There's normally some things that I may be skipping, and you can call me back to it if there's any parts that I am skipping. All right. So yes, in this bonus aspect, I think they were trying to create a game. Okay, a game called Quick Draw. Unfortunately, the code is no longer available. I will try to look for it, but you can watch this video, all right, and try to see how the bonus stuff actually works. Okay, it actually goes on very, very well. Most of the classes actually have bonus material. For the last class that we did, the bonus material was using the split method. Right, you can actually split a string. Okay, just the same way we did dot lower, dot upper. There's a dot split function in Python that allows you to split a string into 2, 3, any amount actually, according to a particular value. So you want to pay attention to the bonus parts. Okay, so let's come back. Let's try to understand. Before I talk about the assignment, does anybody have a question so far?
I wanted to ask you, if you said something about so as not to be confused, we first do one string first,
before we put another if so as not to be confused? I don't really get it. Is it that we write the if then the else first? Then we'll now go back to that first if, then do another if again.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. That if you want to have nested if statements, let me close everything here and try to show you. So let's say I want to do something like this. If x is greater than 0, I will then say print whatever. I'm not going to do it actually. I just want to show you the example. All right. Now, for example, you know that you actually want to write an else statement for this block, right? That, okay, if x is greater than 0, there's something I want to do. But if x is not greater than 0, there's some other thing that I want to do. You want to use an else block, right? Like this. What I'm trying to say is that please write it first like this, right? Do the else block first before you go on ahead to write out the next if condition inside here. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So it's possible for you to be like, oh, let me just be writing if, and when I come back, I will do the else. As your code progresses, you may get confused, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. Do you understand now?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, all right. So the truth is, as you keep practicing, you will find out what works best for you. But yeah, that it's always good to follow, build from bottom to top. Any other question?
None for now, sir.
All right, thank you very much.